I want to thank everybody for joining us today for the next iteration of our Knowledge Burst and our continuing conversation on edge diagnostics. And today I'm pleased to have Eric Doherty with me. I'll introduce Eric in just a bit. He's the president of Blink Science. But what I'd like to do again is set the stage and review a couple of the points that we've talked about in previous webinars, but really kind of push the bubble a bit on where this whole theme of edge diagnostics is headed. So give me a minute and I'll be sharing my screen here. Okay, a little bit of a background here. What I wanted to do is I wanted to start out with just a few stats that really plague our industry, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. And a couple of them, right? Half the population of the world does not have access to essential health services. Now, I don't think with our technology and really the capital that we have throughout the world, I don't think this should be the case. And it's really important that we begin to address this, not just here within the United States, but in general, health access and equity, regardless of social economic condition, gender, or ethnicity. The other aspect of life is 100 million people are pushed into extreme poverty every year because of health-related expenses. Now, that's quite a lot. I love that to be zero. I think health access is one of those vital things that every human being on this planet needs and really deserves to have. The other aspect of life is 12 million. We're expecting a 12 million healthcare worker shortage by the year 2030. That's 12 million. That's worldwide. We're already experiencing a lot of shortage in different parts of the world. I know, for instance, in California, we're way behind on filling a lot of nurse openings. But again, if you expand that out, 83 countries around the world don't have the proper ratio of health professionals to population. That's roughly 23 health professionals per 1,000 in a given population. That's a big number, by the way. And then last, 47 trillion. That's the global cost of non-communicable diseases by 2030, and that was a big word, so I think I got it anyway, stumbled over it a little bit. And we're not talking about COVID here, which is transmissible. We're talking about things like heart disease and diabetes and other diseases that really impact a person's life expectancy and are primary reasons for an individual's life to be cut short. So those are some pretty powerful numbers, and I think we can all agree that one aspect of solving this problem is getting more and more health professionals. That's important. But the other aspect is, how do we make them more effective? How do we begin to integrate technology into the care delivery continuum? How do we push engagement, not just from when I'm sick to an everyday, all the time thing, and move this out to the edge where people work, live, and play? And that was part of our theme in our last webinar. We talked about this whole push of technology moving to the edge, particularly not just wearables and not just things that are watching who you are, or tests that tell you how you built genomic tests, but really tests that were traditionally the purview of big pharma, now being accessible to individuals. And today we're going to talk about emerging technology that's going to change the whole diagnostic landscape and hopefully make this engagement model take a whole different perspective on what we can do from a broader engagement model. Everything that we see, again, this is one of our common themes, is this whole concept of digital self. Years and years ago, you've heard me talk about this on previous webinars. We had this concept of quantified self when IoT began to emerge, but we're going well beyond that, in terms of understanding how people are built, how their bodies are functioning at the cellular level, as well as, their activities or your activities, being able to gauge, your workouts and your exercise routines, as well as your dietary aspect of life, and as well as extending into mental health. So we're getting a broader picture of who we are as individuals and beginning to recognize that we need to put the power of that knowledge into an individual's hands. Now, to enable all this, it's first starts with connectivity. When we look at connectivity, there are over almost close to 5 billion people in the world that have a smartphone, are really a featured enabled devices. In many parts of the world, their internet access is the social tech and social media platforms. And we really, in some respects, have to change that. So health inclusion really starts with digital inclusion and connectivity inclusion. And we see the emergence of 5G networks of, there's a lot of capacity out to the edge. And of course, things like Starlink, which are satellite-based, that are going to cover pretty much everybody on the planet. And now the question is, how do we get out and reach these individuals and give them devices to be connected, but also give them the tools to maintain their privacy and to interact in a meaningful way, particularly in the health and wellness side of life. And as always, this is where we come in as BurstIQ and really creating what we call LifeGraph networks, and how we allow a person to control and manage their own data, but also how that digital persona can interact with others to really create this new interactive engagement environment for health and wellness. Here's again a couple of interesting stats and why we need a different kind of connectivity mechanism. Only 11% of the people in the world trust big tech to maintain their health data. That's a pretty low confidence factor, and rightly so. And we've seen a lot of compromises there. In addition, if we can improve just engagement, and this number really only applies in the United States, we're going to save $100 billion a year just in health costs. That could fundamentally cover, the uninsured population. So the stats are dramatic, and there's plenty of opportunity for improvement in this whole model. And so why I'm now excited to bring in Eric Doherty and have him talk a bit about Blink Science. But before we get that going, I want to just give you what I think is an amazing mission statement from Blink Science. And I want Eric to jump in and talk to us about his background and what led him to step into the role as president. Blink Science is on a mission to help create a world in which no one suffers or dies from communicable disease. Everyone receives swift, effective care when unavoidable illnesses arise, and good health supported by good technology allows humankind to live each day to the fullest. I love that. I love that mission statement. I love what Blink Science is all about. And, I like to bring in Eric now to join us and talk a little bit about his personal journey, as well as, give us a little more color on Blink and what Blink's all about.
Thanks, Frank. I really appreciate it. I'm down here in our laboratory office down in Jacksonville, Florida. So really appreciate you allowing me to present some of our company's information to the group. Some background as Frank alluded to, I do have a pretty extensive background, both in the pharmaceutical as well as the medical device space, working with companies like GSK, Abbott Laboratories, and also AstraZeneca. And I've run pharmacy systems. And my background is really in commercializing and re-commercializing businesses. And so, when I heard about Blink and kind of the work that they were doing, we had originally actually licensed both the patent rights and IP out of the University of Florida. And so when I originally took the role and did the research in taking the role on, those patents were in existence, and found that through some of the commercialization actions that I put in place for the first 2 months of the company, that they weren't enabling. So we ended up pushing that back to University of Florida and developed our own patent and IP internally. And so the system itself is basically based on electrochemical biosensor technology. It's rapid, instant results in testing. The platform itself is beneficial because it can take a multitude of fluid content. So right now we're obviously geared towards healthcare aspects, so blood, urine, saliva, et cetera. But as we move forward into other areas, it can be pushed over into environmental. It can be pushed into food, as well as, I guess, from an extensive standpoint, over back into relativity into the food network and do food testing. So it's a huge benefit from a platform standpoint. And again, that rapid result is a huge benefit to the public.
That's awesome. I'm going to show one slide, which gives a picture of the device, but I think we have something even better than the slide, but I want to just throw it up there because I want people to understand that, this is real, right? This stuff is real. It's emergent. Yes, it's got to go through some FDA certifications for use in the United States, but we're not talking about concepts. We're talking about real science. And here's a picture of that device. And can you explain a little more on the strips themselves? Of course, without compromising any of your
Sure.
core intellectual property.
No. And actually, yeah, our IT and patents are on really the technology into the strips. And if you look at this, it looks very similar to a glucose strip reader that a diabetic patient would have. And I actually have one here. And so that picture there is of this device. So literally we're at a stage right now where we're working with this individual prototype as we speak. The device itself is off the shelf.
Hey, Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I stopped sharing. Could you hold the device up again? Because
Sure.
I want everybody to get a good picture of that.
So it's basically about an iPhone 11 size, so very easy to use. And in essence, what we are doing is taking a strip. Again, it could be manufactured very similar to a glucose strip, but we're taking this strip and basically placing it into the machine, and then you would push the button on the device itself, and it'll give an instant readout. And so it'll basically be either a green in the X2, but a green that you do not have COVID, a positive that you do have it. The X, the yellow, would be basically that the strip is either inserted incorrectly or doesn't have the fluid content on it. But also too, and you don't see it, there's actually a Bluetooth mechanism as well. So when that button is pushed, literally once that result is given within the device, the information is pushed up into the cloud. The key to this is that it is an instant result. So literally it's in microseconds. When that button's pushed, the electrical charge goes into that strip. And so we're measuring the capacitance difference between two areas on that strip. And that instant result is then calibrated into our IT cloud that gives basically the information back to that either employer or person holding the machine to get them an instant readout.
I think that's pretty amazing. I mean, given the state of, let's just hang with COVID just for a second. Given the state of those tests, I mean, even rapid tests take quite some time, and they're not all really that accurate as we're learning.
Right.
And this is going to improve both time and accuracy, and
Exactly.
That's cool. And
yeah, we're actually down to about a 1 femtogram level detection. We're looking right now at spike 1 S1 proteins, which is hugely beneficial. We're thinking that we're going to be around a 98% or so sensitivity and specificity. And so that compared to any type of PCR test, and then you throw in the actual speed of the test, that's really kind of where our device and our platform really sets itself apart, where you do get the sensitivity and specificity. So you get that basic, concept of the product works and the test works, but to have it in that quick of a turnaround is hugely beneficial to the physician as well as the end user community.
And, you don't have to provide specifics, but I have to imagine that kind of instant test, we're really just talking about the price of the strips relative, versus sending something back to a lab and all the costs associated with lab work.
Correct. Yeah, we're really pushing the envelope of low cost diagnostics, here in the United States, but really even globally. As you mentioned earlier, the number of people that are having to really push to make payments for medical expenses, or those that really don't have the internal needs to even go to get a test. We're really looking to bring to market a very, very low cost diagnostic platform where it's pennies on the dollar to get tests done. Again, we're looking at COVID originally and initially, but we're actually moving into a number of other areas pretty quickly. I mean, things like tuberculosis, which is kind of the pandemic over in Africa. We're looking at concussion. We're looking at a number of oncology assays, but even some major ones like sepsis, where you've got a patient, let's say in an ICU ward, and you want to make sure they don't develop septic shock. Wouldn't it be great to have some type of a instant device where you could test them every 15 minutes or 30 minutes to ensure they don't go into a septic shock? And it's just, again, from our end of things, that's hugely beneficial to that healthcare marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, sepsis by itself. I mean, COVID's huge in terms of COVID tests and all the variations of that. But sepsis, in a healthcare setting, is one of the leading causes of death outside of the original problem somebody may present themselves with. And being able to identify it early is absolutely critical in dealing with it. And I know I would love to see something like that in our ERs and hospitals across the country and really across the world.
Yeah, and what we're going to be trying to do, obviously we're going to be hopefully focusing in on an emergency use authorization for our COVID application. We're probably about 8 to 12 weeks out to submitting that into the FDA. But the rationale is also kind of around that sepsis and even troponin area that we're looking at. Troponin's a biomarker for heart attacks. Because of the kind of coexistence of COVID patients developing sepsis, but then also COVID patients having those cardiac issues. We're hoping that with the conversations we're having with the FDA, we'll be actually able to push those through an EUA type of submission as well because of the correlation with COVID. So, from our end of things, I'm looking at about 30 or so assays in a short-term run within the next couple of years to bring to market. But some of those I'm going to try to push in to the EUA effort just based on the fact that it's needed in the medical community.
That's amazing. And I know one other aspect of the technology is that your COVID test is really a saliva-based test. Did I get that right?
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah,
and a number of our tests will be set upon saliva. Correct.
Which makes it a lot easier. I don't like that thing that goes up my nose. So
neither do I. And I think we're looking at like with concussion, again, a saliva-based test for concussion, troponin even, and potentially even sepsis. One of the things too is even on the oncology area. A lot of them we're looking at blood as well, but we'll look at saliva as a potential biomarker. There's a lot of proteins that are in saliva that we can potentially basically use to give a result within our testing platform as well. So those are some of the areas we're going to be definitely pursuing pretty quickly.
And but you're not limited. I mean, you kind of alluded to this. You're not really limited to saliva because you're talking about food safety and water safety and potentially other test points, blood and urine and
exactly.
A plethora of things. I'm kind of interested. Can you expand a little bit on the food side and as well? Because you have a device that's so it's like a Swiss Army knife, and for diagnostics, it really applies across so many things. And food and water are so key to health, particularly in certain parts of the world. This could be again a game changer for a lot of these communities.
Yeah, going back to the kind of the data composition, we're getting to a point where we'll be able to actually correlate both quantitative and qualitative data. So not only will we be able to show, yes, it's there, but also how much is there. And so that's of benefit to us moving the platform into other areas, like you mentioned, either water testing or potentially food testing as well, where you could be in a processing plant and basically ensuring that food is still safe. So that is, I think a huge benefit in that industry. Going to the water part, obviously, one of the things that we're potentially looking at is, again, they've been looking at this, a COVID in water. And, is there an issue with that? And so from our standpoint, we could potentially be used and use our platform in a water testing environment. So a lot of different areas that our business could be moved into quite rapidly.
So we do have one question from the audience. I think at this point, I think would be appropriate to inject right here. And here's the question: would you need a separate machine for each type of bodily fluid being tested?
So that's still to be determined. That's a great question. Obviously this device here, we're literally pushing this through for our FDA EUA submission and potentially a de novo 510K. The device itself has applications within the board setting where I can ramp it up to other type of testing environments, a testing iteration. The platform itself, literally no, to answer your question, no, you don't need another device. Basically, we've got it set up to where the app system that the device talks to can basically update within the firmware system that device based on the test that's going to be run. The problem is that may be a little cumbersome. So as we move forward, some aspects that we're looking at doing is either multiplexing the strip itself. So right now it's got just one test on one strip. So we could potentially multiplex. We are going to look, and we are looking at a COVID flu application in one strip. So that would be that kind of multiplexing. And then as we move forward, do we end up putting in more ports within a device? So that would be an option too. I think later on, we're looking at putting on more kind of computer technology within the strips themselves. And so we're moving into that kind of technology area in the next probably couple of years. But right now, we're just trying to get this on the market as fast as possible.
Oh, yeah.
This was done in about 3.5, 4 months. So we're moving pretty rapidly to get it to market. And you know, as Frank and I talked before we got on this, I'm down in Jacksonville, and as you all know, you know, there's obviously been an increase in the number of COVID cases, and I'm in, unfortunately, one of the hotspots in the country. And, you know, within our office setting, outside of myself right now here in this lone room, our whole staff is wearing masks. And it's gotten to the point where, you know, the ICUs in Jacksonville have been full, and people are out in the hallways. So, you know, COVID's here, unfortunately, and it will be here for a while. And so, as our group is, you know, pushing this forward to get it to market, you know, we're doing everything we can to help everybody out there.
Well, I mean, that brings up a kind of a corollary question, because, you know, viruses by their very natures tend to mutate, right?
Mhm.
Get different variations of it. You know, how adaptable is the test? I mean, staying on COVID, how adaptable is the test, you know, to deal with the kind of what was the mainstream? Now we're dealing with Delta, people talking about Lambda. Does it cut across all these variants? I mean, is it still?
Yeah, we haven't had any direct, let me kind of go back. We haven't done any direct clinical trials to actually show that there's a work that it does work or that it doesn't work. The benefit is we've done some work specifically with S1 spike protein. So we know that it works in that category. And so, you know, some of these variants, you know, they might have to do some kind of chemical upgrades within the testing strip itself. But we're working with a couple of different avenues to protect ourselves within the company to be able to do that. We're thinking that we shouldn't have that problem based on the fact that it's really just a recognition of whether it's there or not. So again, that's still to be determined, but we're thinking that we should be good to go with our platform system the way it's working. It's again, as mentioned, it's an electrochemical biosensor test. So it's not a PCR where you need a solution or need a chemical or need a temperature difference. You know, it's literally just recognizing if it's there or not, if there's a binding that occurs. And if it's not, then it's not there. So I think we're going to be able to work through that without having to be concerned with the variants.
Which, you know, in and of itself, I think, you know, I'm just fascinated by the tech. You know, again, it's this miniaturization of technology that that allows us to do so many interesting things that we couldn't do before. And in your case, it's not messing with the device. Again, as you said, may need to be recalibrated, may need a firmware upgrade at times, but we're taking this fundamental device and we're really dealing with modifications with the low cost aspect of the platform, which is the test strips.
Right.
And so producing families of test strips across all these different dimensions, man, I'm ready to have one in my house, actually. So
well, and again, you know, that's the beauty of the way the device is, as mentioned, is very much off the shelf electronics. So that can be produced in the thousands pretty rapidly. I mean, the strips themselves, they're off of the kind of the web offset printing technology like a glucose strip. So those can be actually done, you know, by one manufacturer, anywhere between 10 to 15 million strips per day. You know, and so again, you know, you could do millions of these in a single day and get them out not only here nationally, but also globally for saturation testing. Because as we've all found now, these vaccinations are great. They're good. They'll keep the symptoms down if you do get it. But as you're seeing more and more in the news, the vaccines are not the protectant that they thought that it was. And so testing is still going to be needed to ensure that people going into buildings, going into concert venues, et cetera, are basically testing negative. And that's really the only thing you're going to go do is to have an instant test to do that right at this spot of entry.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit with you because you talked about the device being Bluetooth enabled.
Yep.
You know, being able to present information back, you know, to a person's profile themselves or even providers. Can you talk a little bit about the data side of life? Because I know you're really attacking this from more of a holistic kind of data picture and not just data off the test strips. Can you walk us through some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so we've got a IT vertical. Basically, it's a Blink Health Pass, and it's in essence EHR system. And so the way the system works is that it'll take information from our testing product, but it'll also take information from outside testing products, either individual products or testing organizations like a LabCorp, Quest Diagnostics, CVS, Walgreens, and basically ingest that information into our system. It'll also take vaccination information. So if it's COVID, if it's flu, if it's other vaccinations that a corporation, a building owner, or even a government wants to put into the system, they can put that information in there too. And basically it's set up to basically be a verification system for people going into entry. So if it's at a government location where it's a port of entry or at a border crossing, to be able to test them instantaneously and to give that result instantaneous, whether or not that person has COVID or a flu or potentially RSV, they can test right there and ensure whether or not that patient customer is safe. The other benefit is that it really allows the corporation or the government to get a real-time perspective on what's happening. So in essence, it can basically be set up as a dashboard system that allows you to see what is happening in certain buildings, in certain, let's say, distribution sites, certain manufacturing sites across your whole platform of an organization. And so you can actually track that information on real-time data, see how the tests are going, see how people are being potentially vaccinated, and then if there are any hotspots that come up. The really cool thing is that it actually has an AI generator built into it. So it'll actually give predictive analysis as well. So it allows you to actually see not only what is happening now, but actually will give you information on what may be happening in the future to at least give you an idea, but also more importantly, to give you kind of that information to then jump into that area and to ensure that it doesn't become a hotspot. And that's really beneficial for us. I mean, the conversations that we're having already with a number of corporations that are kind of in that setting where they've got not only a national footprint, but also a global footprint, they're able to actually talk to us about kind of the issues that they're having. COVID's been an issue. Flu is another issue. And as we're coming into that seasonality, that's going to be of concern to them. So if we can give them information real time on what's happening, but also show them what may happen in the future within that data structure, that's going to be hugely beneficial for them to basically not shut down in operations because they caught it beforehand.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep hanging down the data side of life because as we know, this whole concept of health passes has been a politically charged conversation. And what I like a little, we've been involved in some of the standard creations and how can somebody really own that information themselves and protect their privacy on the other side of life. What I like about kind of these quick point of test applications, because we're seeing that even people who have been vaccinated, there's been some that have been contracting COVID as an example. This really is instantaneous information. It's great situational awareness. But as you kind of push some of this data back into either corporate health and wellness kind of monitoring capability, or even for that matter, government solutions, what's your view on kind of individual privacy? How do you protect somebody's privacy, but yet deal with kind of the overall public health concern?
Yeah, great question. We're based on an AWS system, so we've got the HIPAA compliance that's built into the system, which is beneficial. We also give full control to the information at the patient level. So they have basically protocols within our system that they can either opt in or opt out of the informational system line. And that's really beneficial to them, obviously, because then they get to protect their data. But it also could be beneficial to us. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at doing with the data is really helping the university settings where, again, with our R&D development that we're going to be doing, research and development that we're going to be doing going forward with a number of additional assays, the information that these individuals can provide back to us and back to those universities is very valuable. And so we will give them the option of opting out. But again, knowing full well that the information is being used more for a university setting to get data for their future assay development.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep going down this path just for a bit. When we talk about a lot of the data science and data collaboration, How do you think this fits into the whole clinical trial space now? I mean, that's a whole new world in terms of we've seen the rapid development of vaccines, and how could this really support kind of that continuing momentum in terms of responding to issues from a therapeutics perspective and a clinical trial perspective?
Yeah, another great question. One of the things that we're looking at doing is working with a number of the diseased foundations out there. So if you've got, let's say, a GI foundation or a neuro foundation, if there's areas where they've got basically a drug that might help a certain disease state, our thoughts are is to actually use our device system. So basically setting up a certain type of strip design within our platform for that disease state, where you can either weed in or weed out patients for clinical trials. So if they're looking at a specific drug as an example, and they want a certain population to be mixed in with that drug profile, we can actually set up a test for that type of patient type that they're looking at building for that clinical trial, to ensure not only that the patients are right for the clinical trial, but you want to make sure that the patients aren't right as well. And so you want to be able to choose, what's going to be the best, I guess, rationale behind a patient designated for that clinical trial, and to ensure that you can actually have a really robust result, but also a really robust drug in the end that helps those patients directly.
And I'm going to add a dimension, just kind of watching how some of this is unfolding, more from a clinical trial. Definitely patient recruitment's a big and broader issue, and really having that patient panel being very representative, across demographic groups and social economic groups and ethnic groups and parts of the world. But this actually, and there's always criteria, right? I'm going to be part of this. But this actually adds another level of objectivity to that patient selection. I may have checked all the boxes, but now I have a real test and say, okay, yeah, I'm optimal for this kind of trial, or I'm not.
Right. Yeah, I think one added benefit, you don't have to go anywhere. You can do this at home.
Yeah.
So that's a huge benefit too, where you don't have to have the drag of having to drive someplace, get tested and then go back. It's just something you do at the privacy of your own home, and that data can be pushed up into the cloud for them to do the analysis on.
Which really drives an extended footprint for virtual trials and not site-specific trials. Which
exactly. And then I'll just add in the other thing too, with obviously your group and the partnership that we have with you all. From a blockchain standpoint, that kind of is the end all, where you've got basically that security and safety of that personal record data kept within the system because of the blockchain design within the infrastructure of our IT side. So it's hugely beneficial for the patient as well.
Yeah, you beat me to that question, because I was going to ask you, what are you doing with us? What do you see the value in working with us? Because I definitely see the value in working with your team in terms of supporting your mission. And thanks for bringing that up. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I wasn't paid for it either. That's good. I think, again, we're a global organization, as you mentioned at the beginning, all of the global issues that are going on. And, we've done a lot of outreach with a number of countries where, they're having either COVID spikes or just, countries that are, kind of in that underserved development countries over in Africa, as an example, Botswana and Nigeria. Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India. We've touched on all of those countries, and they're having some problems, and they want not only the IT solution, but they also want obviously the medical device solution, and to actually be able to go to market with both of those is hugely beneficial. And in due time, we'll be putting them both in place. But I think from a global perspectives, keeping the safety of health records and the personal health records of individuals, in a blockchain system is just hugely beneficial going forward. Where you just don't have those you don't have the information out there in the public eye.
There's one other thing. Now I'm having one of those kind of senior moments here of the next question. But we talked about this outreach into these communities that really just don't have access to health. But what we saw with COVID is rapid rise in telehealth and telemedicine. It's been growing now 20+% a year. I don't really see that going anywhere. But tell me how. I mean, I think it's somewhat obvious given what you were saying. But how do you see this playing into kind of that virtual engagement model, both for those underserved communities and even for the rest of us in terms of making that dialogue more impactful?
Yeah, our system actually it's got a Google backbone, so it's able to go up to about 100 languages. So the objective for the IT part is to have a bounce out into telehealth services where, again, both here in the United States, but also globally, if somebody does have a positive test, but also a negative test, they can still go out to a telehealth provider to get information about their testing result and get questions answered and to get really good feedback from that provider on what type of next steps they need to do. As mentioned, COVID's what we're bringing to market now, but with the other assays, if a person has a positive test for breast cancer, what do they do? If they have a positive test for TB, what do they do and where do they go? So those are the things that we'll be putting into the system, nationally and globally, that will really help the patients get access to kind of the next answers to their questions.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to bring up as part of our dialogue that maybe I've missed in terms of asking you a question or something you'd really like to convey to everybody?
No, I think, for the folks that are on, I really appreciate you all being on. I think from a company standpoint, Blink Science is an amazing organization. We're one of those companies that, yes, we're a startup, but we are a very unique startup. I mean, I've got 65 plus people already on my team. We're driving this forward to get it out into the marketplace as far as the medical device as quickly as possible. Blink Health Pass is available now. We started working and promoting that a couple of weeks back out to corporations anywhere between 10,000 employees and above that have both national but also global representation. Really focusing in on those distribution sites or manufacturing sites or processing plant sites, and really working with those organizations to basically, again, keep their employees safe. And as we move forward with our medical device BlinkTest, I think, again, it's going to change the marketplace pretty dramatically once it's on the market, based on the fact of its instantaneous results and the sensitivity and specificity that it brings. And looking forward to hearing from anybody. Feel free to link up with me on LinkedIn, and any questions you all have, please feel free to ask.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot because I didn't, as we kind of conclude, I want you to put your futurist hat on a little bit, because there's really kind of multi-dimensions to this topic, which is artificial intelligence. And I know you're using some as part of the analytics on your side in terms of tests. How do you see that evolving over time, both from a Blink perspective and kind of in general, a futuristic perspective? What do you see that's good and what do you see that's not so good?
Wow. I think the good part on the healthcare side is, really finding out, I think from a future health end of things, what you may end up getting, but also what you may have and don't have and don't know about it. I think that's a benefit. I think also too, is that if you can find out if you've got a precursor to a certain disease state, potentially, that there's ways maybe that you can protect yourself from that. Again, kind of goes back to the cholesterol. I guess I'll put that as a story. If you are a person who is susceptible to maybe potentially high cholesterol levels at some point, and is able to test that before you actually have them, things like that would be hugely beneficial for people to see. That way they'd be able to take maybe the right medications prophylactically before they get into that type of realm. So that's kind of that short-term fix. Long-term wise, I think the more data that's out there, I believe it's a good thing in that data is good because it gives you that information that you need, and maybe more of a finalization part of information that helps you make very good, solid health decisions. So that's kind of that next step. And then the bad would be, again, just maybe, honestly, it's the safety and privacy of medical records. Giving people the benefit of and the control of their own personal health records is a key component that I think people don't think about and should think about.
That's a great answer. So I know we only have a couple more minutes, and there's a few questions that just popped up, which I think are pretty quick. And so let's just address them. All the other ones I think we hit during our dialogue. And these two go together. And if you don't feel comfortable answering any of them, say not ready to disclose that. But this one I know you did. How fast is the test? And the second one, what's the estimated cost for COVID or other tests?
Okay, I can't talk about the pricing yet, so that's still because we're not FDA submitted. So unfortunately, but I will say very low cost, both on the device and the strips. So I can allude to that. We're trying to drive down the price as much as we can with volume. We will be able to do that. I would say think of your glucose strip readers. So if that helps. And then as far as the speed, so literally, we'll do it this way. We're going to try to do it with saliva by licking it. I'm not going to lick this one, but just say I do. Or we put the saliva on the end of the strip. You put the strip in the device, you push the button, there's your result that quick. So it's literally taking this strip, that button, electrical charge gives a result. So hope I answered that one. That one I can answer.
Yeah. And I'm glad you held up the device again. I was going to ask you to do this. And this is the last one. This will make you smile. Do you have any job openings? And if somebody wanted to connect with Blink, how would they do that?
Yeah, very easy. www.blinkscience.com. Right-hand side should be able to drop down into the careers page. Right now, I know we've got 6 or 7 openings right now. We've got sales roles as well as some additional science roles and regulatory roles. So those are available. Hope that helps.
Awesome.
And you can always honestly reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love to connect with you all. If you do have any direct questions, ping me on there and definitely get back to you.
Okay, well, I think that wraps us up today. I want to really again thank you, Eric, for being part of this. It was extremely informative. I learned a lot, even though I know quite a bit about what you're doing. I learned even more. And I thought it was a really fun conversation today. And for all of you who joined us and hung in with us, thanks for attending. Look forward to seeing you on the next Knowledge Burst. And we definitely will publish a recording within the next few days. So look for that on our LinkedIn page as well as on the Blink Sciences page. And for that, you all have a great day. And again, thanks a lot, Eric.
Be safe, everybody. Please be safe. Thank you very much. Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.